Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with Alex Sashlow. This week, is the race really tightening? What's really going on in the presidential? And plus, we're finally going to answer your questions on the Senate and the House. Yes, we're really going to get to them this time. Alex, where should we get started?
I know you really want to talk to people about what's going on with Says Us, but given what we've seen with the two hurricanes, the crazy amounts of misinformation going on, and the negative effects we're seeing even beyond our politics, I think it's even more important now. So, what are you seeing right now, and why is this so important?
You've seen the last week how disinformation can cost lives. I mean, rumors on social media about how the federal government was using Helene as an excuse to seize lithium deposits in Castle Rock, North Carolina. I mean,
that was one of the wildest ones. Yeah.
No, and then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet that it's a Jewish space laser controlling the weather. You can't forget that one. All of that made it harder for first responders to do their jobs, and it's a hostile environment. I mean, some people thought that the $750 disaster assistance was a way for their homes to be seized. I mean, Trump has lied that Harris spent all the FEMA money on illegal immigrants, when in fact, Trump redirected disaster money to the border, and his budget phased out disaster relief money going into the future. And now he's claimed that $1 billion was stolen from FEMA. And of course, with all this, you have Elon Musk and X actually promoting and amplifying the lies. In fact, cheerleading, jumping on stage with the guy. So look, we're going to have to live with that environment through Election Day, but that's the reason, and I'll just make this short so we can get on to the other things, but that's the reason I went out and raised the money to at least launch an alternative to X, says SEZ.US. I really hope everybody who listens will take the time to go over to SEZ.US, sign up. Stay where you're at. Stay on Twitter. We got to keep fighting this disinformation and keep trying to knock down the bad rumors. But if you've had enough and want to build something better, we can. And so that's what I've been working on. And a bunch of people, really smart software engineers, I think, have built a real alternative that can make a difference. But getting back to just what is going on right now with this stuff, you have the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, begging people to stop the misinfo.
He tweeted something like, "To my knowledge, FEMA, TEMA, nor anyone else is confiscating supplies. Please quit spreading these rumors as they're counterproductive to response efforts. And if everyone could please maybe put aside the hate for a bit and pitch in to help, that would be great." And anecdotally, we've heard this from first responders on the ground. It has never been a more hostile environment. It's literally like, I know that there's that old line, we're for the government, we're here to help, but like literally these are like flood victims, mudslide victims coming with relief money, and they're thinking it's a ploy to steal their house out from under them or repo their house so they can get the lithium. It is wild.
First, they say, don't trust the FBI, don't trust the judicial system, don't trust, Trump goes out and attacks everything. And now you can't trust the people coming to rescue your ass. That's literally what this is about. And that is, a lot of it's destructive, but this is going to cost people's lives. It's just that dangerous. And is it any wonder that this is happening on Twitter, owned by the guy who in the last week showed up at a Trump rally and claimed to be dark MAGA, who was just unmasked, is spending another $50 million in dark money to help Trump, and is openly wondering about assassinating Biden and Harris? And on top of it is now loading up in House races. He's dumping lots of money into MAGA Republican House races. So look, there's not much we can do about that, but we can build an alternative that relies on civility, truth, insightful argument. That's what we're trying to do over at says.us. We need your help to build it. I hope you'll show up there. It's not going to happen overnight. Every new platform has its little glitches, but over time, we can build a place where millions and millions and millions of Americans can have a real discussion about the future, disagree about things, but build a community, not tear it down. And the lies and disinformation, we're not going to allow bots on the site, and you can't be anonymous on it. You can be anonymous, but the site will never amplify, the algorithm will never amplify anonymous attacks. It's just something that I hope you guys will take a look at it and sign up. Now, Alex, let's get to I know you want to get into the other stuff.
Well, this ties right into one of the listener questions we got this week. This is from Helen, and her subject line was election interference. I'd love to hear a show discussing all the ways Republicans are trying to manipulate voting to their advantage. You've been very positive about a Democratic victory, but haven't discussed lately about the ways Republicans can cheat to win at the polls. Thanks. And that's from Helen. So, Joe, given the meeting you had this week, given what we've been talking about the misinfo, I thought that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, I've been on a lot of conference calls and Zoom meetings with people who are, really on top of all the potential threats to certification post the November 5th election night. And, these are constitutional, legal, and process experts. And they actually view the 76 days between November 5th and January 20th as the most dangerous, important days ever as Americans, more important than the next 29 days in their view. Because, the view is, of course, there's no doubt that Kamala Harris is going to win the popular vote. She will. In my view, she'll win it significantly enough that it should be very tough to lose the Electoral College vote, even as tight as it's been. But I think she's going to perform better than Biden, who got 51% to Trump's 46.7 in 2020. As you all know, I think she can get higher than that. And if she does, that doesn't mean that every one of the states will fall in line, but enough of them will that she should win the Electoral College vote. But that's not what is likely here. She will win both, but the Republicans are going to do everything they can in the process between November 5th and the 20th of January, inaugural day this year, including, and you can count on this, we all know, and this is what they're worried about, that we all know at 10 o'clock at night, Donald Trump is going to go down and declare every state that he's ahead in and announce that he's won, even though there are plenty of ballots still left to be counted, and a lot of them will be early vote and mail-in ballots or absentee ballots because those always get counted last in most states. He knows this, and he's going to play that. And he's going to, in the next day, he's going to go out and say, look at what happened overnight. They stole it. And of course, a bunch of his followers will believe it and will be off into the same but better planned attempt to change the election results again. And there's a considerable worry about that. So one, stay vigilant. It's not going to be over on November 5th. We're going to win November 5th, but then we had 76 days, in my view, 76 days to save 1776. It'll be 76 days where all of us have to be vigilant. All of us have to be prepared to raise our voices to make sure we're heard and to support all of the guardrails out there that will be trying to hold back the assault on truth, on disinformation, on out and out lies about Election Day. If you look at what we just talked about with a hurricane, imagine what they will be. You don't have to imagine. That's what they're doing when people are coming to save you. We have to count on them trying to put out the cloud of confusion and to take full advantage of that confusion to change the result of the election. And we have to be ready for that. It's not, November 5th, we won, let everybody else take care of it now. So with that, none of this should surprise anybody.
Joe, while we're on the topic of some more listener questions, another one very relevant this week. Obviously, some excerpts of Bob Woodward's book, I think it's called War, came out this week. Tons of little details leaking. And we had a bunch of listeners asking, could this be a kind of October surprise? Does it really, do all the revelations, anything really stand out to you as something that could actually matter for the election?
Yeah, I think so.
That was a pretty soft yeah.
No, it's like, well, because how many times have we said, oh yeah, this is it. This is what something that really cost him. And it never does. But I think the fact that he sent Putin COVID test machines when Americans didn't have them, and that he's had at least 7 private calls with Putin since leaving office, I just think that what's interesting about that is when you and I, we've talked about the Red Dawn Republicans, the Republicans out there who revere Reagan, who are proud that it was George Herbert Walker Bush that presided over the fall of the collapse of the Soviet Union, who've always viewed Russia and Putin in particular as mortal enemy of the United States. This one, I mean, I know he's praised Putin, I know all that, but we know that there are a lot of those Republicans, red non-Republicans we call them, that are on the fence right now, mostly because they just can't bring themselves to vote for the first time for a Democrat. And maybe this might get some of them to throw in the towel on Trump. We'll see. But no, I think this one could be a problem. We'll see how much coverage it actually gets. I actually do think that this is one where I would urge the Harris campaign to go to town on making sure every American knows it, because I do think it might move some of the Republicans, the Nikki Haley Republicans, those kind.
I mean, ask the question, what did he talk to Putin about 7 times?
Right.
Like, it's right there.
How did my COVID test machines do? I don't know, maybe.
Okay, so zooming out, and again, a lot has been made that the race is once again tightening. After a bunch of good polls, there was actually, it's funny, the New York Times poll now has her up 3 after having it tied and freaking everyone out. So it seems like everyone's finding new things to freak out about this week. But in terms of where we are, Joe, just overall in the presidential, anything you're seeing that matters?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we're seeing that we saw October 2022 is the Republicans flooding the zone with bad polls. I mean, basically, we saw that in 2022. They so spooked everybody and the press fell for it that the big red wave was coming. And there are a few of us out there like Simon Rosenberg, myself, Tom Bonnier, all said, hey, the red wave is going to turn into a red mirage, because if you took those polls all out and actually started looking at independent or polls that had very good procedures for selecting their samples and reaching people, high quality polls, when you looked at those, there was no red mirage. So now what's happening is, hey, it's October again. The red wave polls are coming out to haunt everybody, and it's working. People feel a lot of concern out there. But when you actually look at things like Morning Consult, she gained 1 point from last week. She's now up 6, 51 to 45 for Trump. Economist YouGov poll, she's up for another 1 point gain from last week, 49 to Trump's 45. And even as you pointed out, Alex, the New York Times Siena poll now has it 49, 46. I know people may be tired of me saying, look at Trump's number. It's always 45, 45, 46. And if you look at Morning Consult, 51, 45. And I've been saying from the beginning, this is a 46 Trump, 53 against Trump kind of structure of the race. That's all still holding, in my view. And what you're really just seeing is a bunch of low quality and Republican manipulation. And you see this on Polymarket, where suddenly in the betting, Trump is pulling ahead and just in every single betting state, battleground state, except for, I think, Nevada's the only one where the betting still shows Harris with a slight lead. But it's all happened in a week. In other words, she was ahead in all these things, but it's all this is it's manipulation of the markets, of the polling averages, and the press, by the way, keeps falling for it. This is not a bunch of real polls that we're averaging. The Democrats don't flood the poll. In other words, this is they go low, we go high crap, whatever. Our Democratic pollsters are not cooking the numbers and dumping. I think they dumped 24 Republican pollsters dumped polls last week, nationally and across states. So,
one of the things that actually does matter is, remember all those voters that voted for Nikki Haley. And I think at the time we had looked at numbers that said that, 20, 25%, a third, some actually, I think it was like 40, 45% said they weren't going to vote for Trump. And even if that number is like 30%, he is in huge trouble.
So you got the new blueprint poll of Haley voters, just Republicans, not Democrats, who supported Haley. So these weren't, they claimed, but she's doing well because, Democrats were crossing over. Trump would only win 45% of those Haley voters. Harris wins 36% of them. This is that's today. It's now 45-36 among Republicans who supported Nikki Haley. Trump 45, Harris 36. Now that was 31 points. That was 59 for Trump to 28. In this one, she's now gained over time 22 points in that group. And just as a reminder on Haley numbers in key states, she got 26% in Michigan, 297,000 votes, 23% in North Carolina, that's 250,000 votes. And remember, Biden only lost North Carolina by 74,000 votes. Remember, Harris is getting 36% across the board of those voters in these states. I don't see any reason to believe that that's what's going on nationally with Haley voters, that something around that number is happening in these states as well. 13% of the vote in Georgia for Nikki Haley, that's 78,000 votes she got there. 18% of the votes she got in Arizona, that's 111,000 votes. By the way, these are all places. Georgia, Biden won by 14,000. Arizona, he won by like 16, 17,000. And then in Wisconsin, where Haley got 13% of the vote, that's 77,000 Haley votes there. And in Pennsylvania, 17% voted for Haley in Pennsylvania. That's 157,000 votes. And this is a place, again, where Biden won by 44,000 votes. So you look at that, and you look at both the week where she's gained in the polls that are tracking each week, like the quality polls. You throw out the Republican cooked stuff, and then you look at this new poll on Nikki Haley voters and see that she has closed 22 points and is getting 36% of them, and then look at where those votes are in these key battleground states. You got to be feeling pretty good. Two things. She's got more money for the ground game, and the Republicans have, kind of don't have much of one since they dismantled the DNC. And at the same time, she's got more money to put into the ground game, which is another big advantage given that the Republicans have took out the RNC's mobilization efforts and turned it over to basically outsourced it. So they don't have anything in that regard. And the energy and volunteers that have joined. So if all this happens, as we've talked about it, I think you're going to see her continue to move above 51 into a little bit wider margin than Biden won by in 2020. And I think that should be enough with those other advantages, grassroots, et cetera, the Nikki Haley voters, that we win the Electoral College.
You pointed this out earlier, that the 76 days being so important in between Election Day and inauguration. They really are starting to lay the groundwork for the fraud. I mean, you look at the West Virginia legislature, they passed a law this week saying that they won't certify the election if, and the two people that get to decide whether there's fraud are the Republican Attorney General or Secretary of State. I mean, these things start to add up. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, this is quote, the state of West Virginia will not recognize an election of a candidate for president during the 2024 election cycle if the Attorney General of West Virginia or the Secretary of State of West Virginia, in consultation with the West Virginia legislature, determined that election fraud in any state was a major reason that resulted in a candidate for president obtaining a majority in the Electoral College. So this is the laying the groundwork, as Alex points out to, where he claims at 10 o'clock on election night that he won. Some state out there starts with Republican legislature, governor, et cetera, starts fomenting about the unfair fraud, et cetera. West Virginia and other states go, oh, well, we're not going to recognize this stuff. And now we're suddenly into the constitutional crisis and the cloud of confusion that Donald Trump is going to try to create. He's not going to try, he's going to create it, that we have to be fundamentally ready for and understand that it's not over on November 5th. It's not over until we're all there and Kamala Harris has her hand on the Bible and is being sworn in as President of the United States on January 20th, 2025.
Joe, we promised we'd get to the Senate today. Definitely want to spend a little time on it. There's a couple things popping up that I think might make this season a little more interesting for Democrats than I think a lot of people were projecting. Where do you think we stand?
Look, I know we'll get to the House more specifically in a minute, but I think I've made it clear that I feel we're going to win the House. The Senate is overall, we know, a tough map, but Democrats are still doing all the right things. The Democratic Senate Campaign Committee has invested in Texas and Florida. They're trying to expand the map and go on the offensive. Everyone needs to keep an eye out in Nebraska. A new poll done by independent candidate Dan Osborne has him up 5 points on incumbent Republican Deb Fischer. That would be a pretty big deal for an independent to win and defeat the Republican incumbent there. If that happens, they're
basically out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. Dan Osborne they're attacking the living daylights out of him, but she's got such a low approval rate. I think last time poll I looked at, her approval rating was 39 favorable, and the rest was pretty starkly unfavorable. That she's in a really rough spot against an independent who is in a Navy vet, and we're not talking about Navy officer here. We're talking about this guy exudes blue collar, on the shop floor, union, pro worker, blue collar guy. And I'm not sure that the attacks are going to play well for Deb Fischer. So keep your eye on that one. I truly believe that Allred can win and defeat Ted Cruz in Texas. It'll be tough. It's going to be close. But if Osborne and one of these others, both Texas and Florida, are truly in play, those are the three Republican incumbents who are in trouble. So essentially, there's only one Democrat right now, because we're defending a lot of ground out there. Sherrod Brown in Ohio and Casey in Pennsylvania, other places, Arizona, the Arizona seat, Nevada. But all those are looking really strong. And I think we're going to win them. So that comes down to there are three Republican seats that are in trouble, and we can win one or two of them. That should not be ruled out. And the only place right now where is John Tester in Montana. It's uphill for him there, but Tester still can win it. You know, the one thing about Montana is it's totally possible that the national media are missing it. And Alex, you've pointed this out in the past.
It seems like, and this is a pretty common, I think the only national pollster I probably trust in Montana is Celinda, because she's from there. But it's pretty clear that, you know, while everyone else is screaming about abortion or Trump or whatever, the issue there's a really specific thing about public lands and how basically the Republican, he wants to privatize it, and Tester is doing a very good job taking it to him on it. That could swing this. I mean, again, uphill battle, but...
No, and you have to remember there's an abortion ballot initiative in Montana as well, which could help Tester. So, by the way, that's the same in Florida with Debbie McPherson-Powell. You've got a 6-week ban there, and you've got a initiative on the ballot to reinstate Roe v. Wade in the state of Florida. There are these other things, and I agree with you about the privatization of public lands issue in Montana. That's not going to fly well. And they've done it again where they recruited big pockets and stuff, but not the best candidate. And he wasn't even really from, I think Tester once said he has a tractor that in the barn that spent more days in Montana than he has. But in any case, I just think that you basically down to 4 states that are going to decide the Senate. And we have to probably win 2 of them, any 2 of them, to keep it. And it's not out of question or impossible that could happen. In fact, I think there's some really, the ticket splitters in America today are going into this election are not on the Democratic side. They're not. Democrats know the threat, and independent-leaning Democrats know the threat, and I don't think they're going to be many ticket splitters there. I do think Nikki Haley supporters could be ticket splitters and others, the Red Dawn Republicans and even Dobbs' dads who are Republicans who are concerned about their daughters. I think you're going to see, and because I'm seeing some of this, you know, and if you look at how well Democratic Senate candidates are doing compared to the top of the ticket, there are clearly Republicans that are saying in the polls that they're voting for Trump, but then voting for Gallego or voting for Sherrod Brown, for instance, in Ohio. And I think there's some Republicans who are going to vote for Trump because they just never voted for a Democrat before in their lives, but may not want to give him the blank check, particularly with total immunity and all that other stuff. And so I think there's going to be ticket splitting that could really surprise people in these Senate races, like in Florida, in Texas, maybe Montana, and maybe a really incredible surprise will be Nebraska. But there is an opportunity here for us to take it all, but it's going to be in those 4 seats.
And Joe, I know you mentioned this earlier, but you still think Democrats are favored to win the House?
Yeah, I don't see all the polling I've seen, and you're in some of these, Alex, working with them, and Democratic challengers in these battleground districts, even ones that are kind of outside, they're not really the top battlegrounds, they're just on the outer edge. Those Democrats are doing much better and closer than we thought at this stage. And I think in the battleground, the battleground districts where where Biden won, but the Republican won the House seat, those polls all are showing Democrats outperforming and on track to win them. There aren't many House polls out there, but if we are tracking towards a 6 to 7 point national win, that's going to be very good news for Democrats in these kinds of districts. There's a bunch of good data points out there. The new Susquehanna poll of Pennsylvania 10, this is one of the most contested races. Trump won it by 4 points in 2020. Harris is up 46-41. She's winning it by 5, a district Trump won by 4. And the Democrat, Stetson, is up 9 points on the incumbent Republican, Scott Perry. Now, that's what I'm talking about. This is the kind of things that are going on in these battleground districts. You have the new Muhlenberg poll, Pennsylvania 7, the presidential race there, Harris 50, Trump 47. The Senate race in that district, Casey 51, McCormick 45. And in the district, the House race, Wilds at 51, the Democrat, is at 51%, and McKenzie, the Republican's at 45. So, and that's a Democratic incumbent. So it's a battleground. I mean, that's one of the battleground seats that they wanted to go after, if I'm not mistaken. So there isn't a lot of battleground polling that's being released, but the glimpses we're seeing there just keep telling me, no, the House, we should be very strong there. And which also makes the point, if House battleground districts are outperforming like this, then it tells me it's going on everywhere. In other words, it's not just, in Pennsylvania, Democrats in these House districts are running well ahead of where Biden was in 2020, but that's not happening in Ohio. No, it is happening in Ohio. There may not be battleground House districts in Ohio, but that Senate seat is. And I think that's why Sherrod Brown is running. Basically, right now, the polls have Trump up by 5 or 6, and they have Sherrod Brown up by 3 or 4 or 5. So that can't happen unless there are people voting for Trump and voting for Sherrod Brown. And that's why I do think there's this ticket splitter thing going beyond just how Democrats in some of these districts that we just pointed out are actually winning over independents and probably Republican-leaning independents. Maybe they're Nikki Haley voters too.
Well, Joe, I know a lot of people were asking, so thanks for spending the time to get into the House today. I do want to make sure, like you said, everyone does go and check out says.us. I'm pretty sure they're opening it up to all users in the next couple of days if they haven't already, so that's pretty exciting. Joe, that's all the time we got.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to That Trippi Show. Thanks, everyone, for asking about Says Us. You can go check out the beta at sez.us and help us take back the town square. The podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. So check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Ask your friends to join us here in the final weeks as we count down to Election Day. And we'll be following a lot more of these races more closely in these battleground states. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, Please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Alex.
Resolute Square.